So during this time, Armstrong was also on a local radio channel, KORE. We talked about that last time. He ended up getting a half-hour slot. And so he just continued to be known as this televangelist. And
Televangelist, like before television was a thing.
I know.
He couldn't have been the only radio preacher, though. I mean, I feel like that had to have been a thing.
No, they were still more out there. But again, this was before the television was even invented. So, or I don't know, when the fuck did the television come out? There was like an early version in the 20s, I want to say. But Armstrong was on that. He knew media. He knew how to
Mhm.
take advantage of reaching out to a platform that was massive. He was so good at it.
Thankfully, he never got
So,
his hands on social media.
oh my fucking. Well, his followers, his current followers still do.
Well, in
We'll
this,
talk about it.
yeah. Okay, we'll get there.
Anyway, yeah, we'll get there. It's a
All
lot of
right.
shit. All right. So also in 1934, the Plain Truth magazine came out for the
Um,
first time. Is that the cringiest word, Pats? The Plain Truth magazine. I think he reached more of an audience through this magazine of his, maybe even than his program. It was
agree with
everywhere.
you.
There were people in our comments even saying that they had found this in supermarkets or gas stations at some point. The Plain Truth magazine made it to so many different countries.
Well, it
It was
was
huge.
free. People loved things that were
It
free.
was free. Yeah, and it kind of started around the time of the Great Depression. People were saving stuff. You never know if something is going to be of value at some point.
At
So this
least
was a
toilet
free monthly
paper.
magazine. Toilet paper. Oh, that brings me back to COVID days. Okay. So it
Go.
was a free monthly magazine, much in the same way that the Seventh-day Adventists had their own magazine publication. Even today, it's like, I want to say one of the longest running monthly subscription magazines out there. Um, but he kind of started with some of his early teachings on things like British Israelism, which we'll talk about. Armstrong had a lot of very, I want to say, bizarre and very different teachings. There were things like prophecies about the end times or doomsday. Armstrong lived through 2 world wars, so I think his psyche was kind of like thinking about, well, we could all perish at some point, anytime. And he saw probably all these devastating things when he was growing up and when he was a young man trying to navigate the world. 2 world wars were going on. So, of
Right.
course, this is what he's thinking about. Um,
Well, and I can say from looking at the beginning of one of his other books, The Missing Dimension in Sex, um, definitely talks about World War I and World War II and links just the idea that because of the way the world changed after each of those wars, like,
mhm,
oh, it's so bad now. Oh my gosh, everyone should be worried about this. But that's what he did with the plain truth. He got it out to people every month. He got it on newsstands and grocery stores, etc., all of these places. And what they did was they actually did share truth. I'm convinced that they did because they were exposing, in a way, real things that were scary in the world and
mhm.
doing it in a way where mainstream media, has a spin because mainstream media's job, I'm going to get a little conspiratorial here, but mainstream media's job is to make sure that the population keeps trucking along smoothly. People are going to work and school and doing their jobs and keeping up services. Like, make no
Right.
mistake, that is the media's job, but they also are trying to make money with clicks and everything. So they've got like this weird relationship with how they share information with people through media. But he was like, fuck this. People are going to be like really glomming on to the idea that nuclear war is scary as hell. And so that's what I'm going to put on the front of my magazines. I mean, he was clickbait before we invented the term clickbait, right? Because he knew how to put things that were true and scary front and center, and then he could have his ideologies piggyback on it, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And,
beautifully stated. That's exactly what he did.
and
You
he could
play on
hammer,
people's fears.
well, right. And he
Nothing
could
drives a
hammer those
person.
ideas over and over and state it in, like, he'd have buzzwords, right? Which is a trick we still use, buzzwords to make sure we knew what he was talking about, and then attach all of these things, all of these ideologies to it so that
Right.
people would hear it over and over and over. And then pretty soon you just
Start
associate
sticking.
those things. So,
Yes.
yes, he knew what he was doing. Like we said last time, it's just like Sesame Street. You repeat it enough times, it gets remembered.
Yes.
And it gets taken as
nothing's
truth. That's the thing. It's not that you just remember it and, oh, I heard that somewhere. It's like
yes.
you hear it enough times and in enough ways, it embeds itself and you just take it as truth.
And nothing motivates a person more than playing on their fears. It's like
Yes.
when you go back to folklore and you tell children, don't go into the woods by yourself because there's an evil monster in here. You control the situation through fear. This is what Armstrong did.
Yep.
And
Through
yes,
the Plain Truth
you
magazine.